Hello everyone. This is going to be a tutorial just kind of quickly going over nav markers and how they operate. I currently don't have anything else in the map other than, this chopper. I've got a banished, I almost said covenant, a banished dynamic object here just to reference, and then I've just got two squares here. So we're just gonna kind of do a nice and quick tutorial over a few different things. But let's go ahead and get into it, and let's talk about nav markers and how they kind of operate and work. So first off, you're going to need an empty script brain. Of course, you're going to want to go into the node browser here. You're going to go to nav markers, and before we can even start on that, you're going to need a trigger of some kind. I'm just going to use the basic like on gameplay start. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach two different nav markers to both of these objects. So one to the dynamic object here, and then one to the vehicle. And the vehicle, the circle, is just because I have the boundary on. So that does nothing. I don't have any other scripts or anything, so don't worry about that. But I'm going to need that for later. So if we go into our nerd graph here, we have on gameplay start. We're just going to go straight to nav markers. And when we're on nav markers, there's two right here. So this is technically kind of like declaring a nav marker of some kind. We have the normal one, and then we have the global one. Just to kind of explain the difference between these two. Essentially, I always use the global one when I can, especially if I know it's going to be a complex script. If it's not going to be too crazy of a script, you might want to just use the normal nav marker. The difference is that this nav marker, not the global one, so not this one, but just this one, is only going to reference to this script brain. Whereas, like, if we had multiple script brains, you want to reference the global nav marker. So, like, let's say if you have this and you want it to be updated, but you run out of room down here in the bottom, then you would want to use global. But this is going to be a pretty easy scripting tutorial, so we're just going to use just the standard nav marker. And we're going to go all the way down to set. This should be in alphabetical order, so just remember it's always going to be, the browser is always going to be in alphabetical order. So the first thing we want to do is enable it. We're going to grab enable. We're going to do the nav marker icon. We're going to set the nav marker message. So we're going to we want a string attached to the nav marker. A string is just like a text, honestly, is how I refer to it as. We're not going to use nav marker text. We're going to use message instead because this is going to be a little bit more advanced. If you use text, it only gives you one word. So it gives you a preemptive string, which does save on nodes, but not a lot of people use that. So, and then we're going to do set nav marker progress. Along with this, we're going to attach it to an object. So attach would be at the top because it's in alphabetical order. So attach to object. And then we also want to set like a parameter of some kind. So this nav marker is only going to be accessible whenever a player walks within a certain meter distance of the object that we're setting it to. So set player, let's do set player, not docking. Where is it? Set player distance, visibility params. So params is parameters. So we've got all these nodes here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to string these diamonds to diamonds. So we're going to enable it first, or we could even enable it last if you want it to be cleaner. The reason that enabling it on or off doesn't really matter is because we're setting these, here, I'll do this. We're setting these, all of these, what would you call these, options or, there's a word for it, priorities to this nav marker. And so we're going to string all these to this nav marker. So we're going to set these first, and then we're going to turn the nav marker on. So it doesn't have to be enabled in order for us to see it, right? But like, let's say, because when the game starts, it's going to funnel through to each of these. And let's say we start the game. I'll even show you what this looks like, because this can get pretty advanced too. Where when you start the game, it's going to run it through all of these objectives. And so if you turn it on first, if you enable it, and you always have to either enable or disable, and we're just going to name this Mark 1. So let's say we want to tie it to an object. We're going to get, the object that we have here. But let's say that we tie it to this object. And, well, I swear I'll get back to this. We want the message. So we're going to go back into UI. And there's 3 different message types. This one is if you want to get the player name. This one is for numbers or math. And then this one is for more advanced, like just words, I would say. So we just want to use this one, and we're just going to use string 1, and we're going to use alien, because it really doesn't matter what our message says. And then you might be thinking, oh, offset, I can just plug this in here. You cannot. In order to get the offset of an object, and it's going to automatically get the object that you tie into it. So we just want to tie it to that object, and then it doesn't know where, after it's tied to the object, where you want it. So this is what this is for. We're going to set these to 0. I typically add like plus 50 or plus 1, 0.50 or plus 1, just to give it a little, like put it above this object a little bit, just so that it's easier for players. I don't know. It just makes it cleaner, I feel like. And then we're going to set the message. And then the progress is going to be 50. And I'll show you guys how to change the progress and stuff like that too. We're going to change it to contested. And then the minimum distance that you have to be in is going to be 0. And the maximum distance is going to be, let's just say, 25. Now, the minimum distance is important too, because if you don't want the player to be able to see it when they're too close to it, that's what the minimum distance means. So now, when a player is in between 10 and 25, they should be able to see it. If they're over 25, they won't be able to see it. If they're within the 10, they will not be able to see it. But if they're in between these 2 numbers, as far as distance from the object, which is this, they're going to be able to see it. And then we're just going to go ahead and play. We shouldn't have any errors. We're just going to kind of look everything real quick. And then we should be able to hit play button. That's what it was. So we forgot to, when we set the advanced, we forgot to change this because it starts out as empty. So we want to change this just to damage type. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to change it to power. So it looks like a little icon that's like exploding. And we'll go into it. And then you'll notice that I am without the range. So first off, what we notice here is that, and this is what see, notice how, like, even though I set it to +1, this object's center is technically on the bottom. So that's what the X, Y, and Z is for. So we're gonna probably add like maybe 10. We'll set it to like 10 or 11. But if we look at the object, right, we get too close to it, it goes away. And then this is about 10 meters right there. So if we get too far, though, after 25, it goes away. So only whenever I'm within the range. So we're going to change this to be the minimum to be 0. And then the alien is fine. The icon looks good, but you do notice that little white trim around it. So we're actually going to give this object health. And when I shoot this object, it's going to damage it. And so I'll show you guys how to do that here in a minute. We're going to go back into our node graph. And so a couple of things, right? We just delete the parameter and we want to change the Z axis. Let's say 15 because it's kind of a bigger object. So Z is just up and down. So we're gonna make the marker from the bottom go up. And so you'll notice that this is pretty simple. So this is pretty fast. However, if we have a ton of, I'm gonna reference what I was earlier, where the nav mark and enable is set first. If you have a ton of scripts going on, especially after gameplay start, the game is going to funnel all the way. And so sometimes, like, what it'll do is it will actually kind of look more so like this, where the game is trying to set up so many different nodes that sometimes it takes it a second or 2 to get to whatever trigger you have. Because if you have multiple of these in your game, it's going to funnel one at a time. It doesn't trigger all of them at the same time. And so sometimes it takes a little bit. So you'll notice that, like, there's a slight delay and then it turns on. Right before it turning on, you could see the A, so the basic icon, which is why I'm always going to recommend, when you guys are enabling nav markers, turn the nav marker on after you've set all of the features. I know that that sounds backwards, but that way it's setting all of these first, especially if you have like a parameter of some kind. So it's setting all of these first, including the parameter, and then it's turning the nav marker on. So it's setting the default for the nav marker and then turning it on. That's kind of important. A lot of people will tell you to set the nav marker enable first, but don't do that, especially if it's a more complex script. If you're not noticing that delay though, and it's like almost instant, like you see that right there. So if you're not noticing the delay, then you should be fine. But if you do notice it to where when you go into the gameplay and it takes it a second and then it pulls it up and it's just like an A, B, or C, that's because the priorities or the options for the nav marker haven't been set yet. So you have to set them first, then turn it on. I always recommend that because you want these to be on the second that the nav marker is turned on. So and then just to kind of move on from that. So let's say we have we attach it to the object, we set the icon, we set the message, we set the progress bar, and then we turn it on. Let's say we then want to attach this to two different objects, right? So we want to attach it to not only this object, but also these two. There's a couple different ways to go about this. We can actually, we can duplicate this, and then we can attach it to the two different objects, right? And so I'll show you guys what that looks like. And we can even use the same offset, okay? So we can use the same offset, we can use the same plugins. This is what's called a sequence, by the way. Notice how everything is attached to the blue marker at the top. And then, so if we do this, we go into here. We need to grab those two references too, those two objects. And we're gonna tie them here and here. And then we're gonna do this. So, second we start, we should have multiple. And so those are a little bit up because of the plus. So if we want we're gonna separate it, we can split this into multiple nav markers. So, and then we can do offset, we can do here, and offset for this one is here. And so on this object, it's gonna be 15, but on these objects, we're just gonna set it to 0, or 1 maybe. And so, oh, sorry about that. So it reset that because it's gonna go off of whatever the most recent one is for the vortex, or the vector. But we're going to delete these. So that's how you clone it, is you just want to clone the attach object settings. If we're going to be setting, like whenever a player walks into a certain range, we want it to be docked, right? So let's say on object entered, on object entered area, and on object exited area, right? We're simply going to grab the area monitors. And I've kind of gone over this before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Oh, actually, I think I can, yeah, I can just use the same one. So we want it to dock to the player's screen whenever they get within a certain range. And so the docking is actually going to be quite simple. We're just going to do attach, we're going to do set docking order. And the order we'll actually get into. So we can turn this nav marker to be order 1. So this one right here, we can do order 1. So no one's going to be in the zone, so I'm not in the zone on gameplay start, so I'm not really worried about that. And then what we can do is we can do set nav marker docking. We're going to dock it to this player. I'm going to clone this. You can tie it. Technically this you can tie back because this is a variable. So you can tie back to variables, you just can't tie back if there's a different sequence, you can't tie it back to certain things. There are some things though that you can use for different sequences, but we're gonna create a new sequence, technically 2. And for one of these sequences, we're gonna pass it through the player. And we're gonna dock it to the player screen. And then for the next sequence, we're gonna pass this one's gonna be false. So we're gonna turn it on and off on exited and entered. And we actually have to set a boundary. Almost forgot about that. We actually have to set a boundary for the object, because right now it's basically saying on player entered the object or the monitored area or zone. This is what the zone is right here. And so this is the monitored area when a player enters and leaves. So you should notice that the second I enter, right, it gets docked to my screen, and the second I leave, it undocks, just like that. So, let's talk about giving this object health. Man, that is weird. Let's talk about giving this object health, and kind of like what that looks like. So we're gonna reference the object again, and we're gonna pull up another. You can technically make it all the same sequence and just add this to wherever, but we're just gonna make a new sequence here, and we are going to say that on object, on gameplay start, we're gonna set a basic number variable. So if we go to declare number, we're gonna do banished core health or HP. Just keep it nice and short. And we're gonna set the value of this to 50. Actually, yeah, let's do 50. We're gonna set the normal value of this to 50. We're gonna set it on local. We're then going to declare, sorry, we're gonna get object number. We're going to set, right? Set object number. So technically, you don't have to value 50. So I would put these on local if you can. But what we're doing is we're saying on gameplay start, right? We're setting the health of, or the banished core to 50. So this is just the health bar. So we're creating a health bar, and then we're gonna set the value of this object. We actually have to set the scope to object, because we are referencing it to an object. My bad. And so we're saying for this object, we're now setting a health bar of 50. So if we want, we could technically reference this many times, and we could give different objects the same health bar if we had more 3 or 4. But we're not going to do that. And so this object now has a health bar of 50. And what we want is on player or on object damaged, right? So we're going to go all the way up, and we're going to grab, I think it's in events, should be on object damaged. And we're going to say it to this object, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to update, right? Because this little guy right here, progress is 50. We're going to update this to be damaged over time. And so we want to set the health bar to 1, but then we're going to grab this. We're going to grab this. And like I said, you could, if you wanted to keep this clean, you could technically tie this all the way back if you're low on nodes, but we don't have that issue right now with our map, so we're just going to tie this to it. We're going to get the same nav marker, and then we're going to set the progress, and you'll notice you could attacking object, no, so the object that's damaged right there. So what it's going to do is on this object being damaged, we're then going to get the object's health, and we're going to change the value to whatever the object's health is. So it doesn't know when it's damaged, right? We have to subtract health. So we don't have that node there. And so we're going to go into, let's do, I think it's in logic. It should be in math, but it's in logic. We're going to identify it. We're going to do -1, right? And then we're going to change our scope to object. So on object damaged, right? What's happening? On this object damaged, we're going to change this object, which is this one. And we're going to change it to -1. So it's going to subtract 1 every single time it's damaged from this object. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check the health of it, right? So we're going to go here. We're going to go to our compare, and we're going to do if the value of it is equal to or under 0. So if A is below B. So if it's below B, if it's below 1, then it's 0 or below. So we just created a branch, checked it. If it's true, we're going to have it destroyed or delete the object. So we can do objects, we can do delete. If true, delete this object. Okay. But then if false, we need to update this nav marker. This is the health bar. So if it's not destroyed yet, we're just gonna update the nav marker, and the progress is gonna be the HP. Now, this is wrong because it doesn't know um what where the progress is supposed to be. So like, let's say if we set it to 50, and then we just continually get, you know, it. I'll go ahead and show you guys because it's a little easier to show you than it is to talk about it. But you'll notice that the second I shot it, it just killed it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set it to 50. We're going to get the object. Let's see, -1. So increment every single time it's damaged. Lower. I think it's this. Yeah, if A is above. So if A is below, yeah, B is greater. If 1 is greater, then do the rest. So you'll notice that there's no progress. And that's because the progress bar doesn't know what to get the numbers from. So we have to do a little math here. So if we go to math and we go to, I think it's divide that we need. So we're going to divide this number, right, by the number of health that's remaining. So every single time it's damaged, it's going to subtract 1 from 50. And then we're going to get the number. So let's say it's like 40 or whatever. We're going to divide that by 50 again. And then we're going to get I think it's the whole. We're going to set that there. It might actually be the quotient. Yeah, it might be the quotient. There you go. So it's going to be the quotient, and you'll notice that it now has a health bar. So if I sit here and break it, then it disappears. So just like that, you've created yourself a core, and then every single time the gameplay starts, it should just be there. If you want to, you can. So docking order right here, right? So let's say the second that a player starts the game, we want them to have this docked to their screen, and we don't want a parameter to be in effect, right? So we want every single player to have like an object or a marker, the marker of the health docked to their screen so that they can see it at all times. So we're gonna need 4 each player, and we're gonna do the same, on gameplay start. I'm just kind of dragging this over here so that we can look at it a little easier. And we're going to grab in the players. We're going to get all players. And we're simply going to do, so we're going to set everything for it. We're going to create it, and then we're going to set every single player to see this and to execute per player. So the docking order is, we will get into this, but we're going to set it for 1 for right now. And we are going to just leave it as that, and it should dock to every single player that's in the game. And it does not. And let's see here. So execute per player, set dock order to 1. Oh, we're not enabling the dock. We're not filtering the player. So let me grab this real quick. My bad, guys. So we're actually going to set docking order to 1. So this is going to be the order that this nav marker is, and then we're going to attach the state for each player. So then we tie this to this. I thought that was weird too, because I forgot that it's supposed to have a player node string. And then we're going to say that we want it to be this. So we're going to get all players, and we're going to set it to true, right? And so we're going to attach the health bar of the core to all players. Just like that. And then every time it's damaged, we can now see that there is a health bar on our screen. So pretty neat, right? The second that, well, actually, I can just duplicate this. The second that it's killed, though, or that the core is exploded, we do want to make sure that the nav marker is removed from all players, and so we're gonna just simply disable it from all players. I don't know if this step is necessary, but I like to be extra cautious when it comes to nav markers because sometimes they can glitch or they can lag or anything, and so we just want to make sure. Now let's say that we want to attach a different nav marker, so we're going to create a new nav marker, and let's say that we want to this marker is going to be number 2. We're going to attach it to a vehicle instead, like something that actually moves around, just to kind of show you guys. And actually, I don't even think I need that. I think I can just do attach. So right where this is going to play into effect is you are going to simply attach it to multiple objects just like before, right? And you could create a whole new nav marker. And let's say we do that just to make it easy. So I wish that pasting worked better in this game. So let's say we make a new nav marker, right? And we have all of these objects and we have all these here. And we just want to change this one to be the vehicle. Now we could use the same principles where the vehicle itself is right, is going to be attached to the nav marker. We can use the same, we copy paste this, whatever. Or we can do this, and hopefully I can show you guys kind of like what that looks like. For right now, we're just going to disable this, but and then I guess I can delete this too, because it was just try to show you guys how to dock things to players. Let's say we want to attach a new nav marker, and we're going to name this one Mark 2. So this one's going to be completely different. If we left this alone and we named it Mark 1, it's technically going to override our first nav marker. So it's always good to, for the identifier you want, as if you're making a new nav marker, creating a new nav marker, it needs to be its own setting, if that makes sense. We're going to attach this to the chopper, and then we're going to set this to it doesn't really matter. We'll just do it to artiface, whatever. And then we're going to change the icon. Doesn't really matter what the icon is. And then for docking order though, this is important. So we're going to change this to 2. And so you'll notice we've got 2 different icons here, or 2 different things. And if I enter this, it doesn't dock to my screen. If I enter this one, it should dock to my screen. And then on top of that, if we damage it, it's got a health bar. This one doesn't. So we've got 2 different nav markers here. And what we can do is we can even set, if you want to get a little bit more advanced, we can go to UI. We can do set player, sorry, not UI, nav markers. We can do set nav marker team text. Yeah, team visibility. So if you set the team, it's going to change the color based on who you are. So like, let's say if this is on my team, right, it's going to be blue. Why didn't that change? It's going to be blue. But if I have something that's not on my team, and like, let's say it's going to be, let's say if we change, say each one to a different team, then it'll be red. And it doesn't matter what team you are. Like if I'm team 1, right? Anything on my team is going to be blue. If I see anything that's on a different team, it's going to be red. So just know that blue means allied, red means not. And you can even notice that the health bar changes too. If we go into here again, and like let's say we only want the enemy team to be able to see the nav marker on the chopper, right? We're gonna set team visibility, and oh, that's kind of cool. So you could set technically 2 different progresses for teams, but that's a little more advanced. I just didn't know that was a thing. So we're gonna do set nav marker visibility, and so it's gonna be, and like the enemy team will see this too, right? I'll switch teams for y'all, but we're gonna say this is gonna be team Eagle. So we're setting the team, and then we're setting the team visibility, right? And so the team visibility, I think this is like what team can see it, and then you can change all other teams to false. So it's on my team, I just can't see that nav marker. And then when I go to the other team, Cobra, I'll be able to see it. So if I start the game, you'll notice I can't see the nav marker. But if I change Cobra, all of a sudden it's there. So that's how you would filter it per team. And then if we go into here, and like just to show you guys an example, if we delete the team icon, right, we're not setting that nav marker to any team, so it should be white or neutral, but we only want the visibility to be for the enemy team. So I'm still on, Cobra, it was there. If I switch to Eagle, it instantly goes away. So only Cobra can see that. I don't know why you would ever, for all other teams to put true. I don't know why that would be a setting ever. But we're just gonna, backtrack on this. So we're gonna kind of move back to docking order and why docking order is important. So you'll notice here it's a 1, and here there's a 2. So these two are on 2 different docks, right? And then if, let's say on, this object entered, it doesn't really matter. I could do on player spawn if I wanted to, but on player entered, let's say they enter, the, I think that's the core. I don't, the gate outpost engine, the Spanish core that we have earlier. And we're just going to simply copy this and paste this down here. And we're going to use the banished core, and we're going to say whenever people enter the banished core, right, we're going to add and remove both nav markers. So both of the markers that we've made, 1 and 2, we are going to add both of those. We're going to dock that to the player that enters or leaves the zone. And so, like, let's say if we go into here, you'll notice I can see both, right? Team Eagle, Team Cobra, the health bar still works. When I enter it, it should dock both of these on my screen. You'll notice that this is docking order number 1, while that was docking order number 2. And if we want to switch them, right, where, let's say this one is going to be 3, because it goes in order. So if we theoretically, if we change that to 3, it should put it on the far end from left to right, right? Just like that. And so they're switched. Pretty cool, huh? Just to give you guys an idea too, you could, if you want to keep it simple, you just do 1, 2, and 3. So if you want, this is the same thing. It's just left to right is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So depending on the order that you want it to be in, it really doesn't matter. Like it's the same thing as we just tested, right? So, let's say we want to take this a step further, right? So we're getting into a little bit more advanced areas here where we now want to channel, filtrations. So not just with teams, because teams is like taking a group of people, but we want to set it for visibility for players or per player. So what we're going to do with this, and we'll just kind of leave this off the side here. Let's say we now want to limit what players can see the nav markers that we've created. And so let's say we take the nav marker, we take the player, and we can pass. We've got a couple different options here for pass, true, or false. So let's say on every single player spawn, right? Every single time that a player spawns, we're going to quickly turn off. They will not pass the filtrations. They should not be able to see the nav markers that we have here. And so we're going to attach this nav marker, and we're going to set this to false. So they should not be able to see this nav marker, and they should not be able to see this nav marker. And so we're going to turn both of these off for whatever player that spawns. And I'll show you guys what that looks like here. So even though the nav markers that we have are active, we can't see them, right? And so they're not there anymore because me as a player, when I spawn, I turned them off. And so this is how filters work. They're pretty advanced. The reason why, because this is a very simple script, right? But the reason why that they're advanced is because you can do a lot of different things with this. So it's a good to understand them, that they're not per team, but that they are per player afterwards. So per team would be like the group, whereas the individual player is a little bit different. And so let's say we want to, on object damage, we want to turn on the filter of the health bar for the player that's damaging it, right? So once this is damaged, we're going to direct it here. We're going to take the attacking object or the player, and we're going to turn on and make it true. So now I'll be able to see after I've damaged it that, oh, I can actually interact with this object, or I can mess with it, or I can destroy it if I'd like. So if I go into the gameplay start, right, you'll notice I can't see anything, but if I touch this, there you go. And we've got our health bar and everything like that too. Tons of different ways and things like that you can mess with it, but I hope that this tutorial was somewhat helpful of just going from a very basic to a little bit more advanced on how nav markers operate, how they work, and things like that. Just a real quick cutter, you cannot have more than 32 active nav markers at a time, which are these guys. So rule of thumb, do not place or have more just especially if you're newer to it, don't have more than 32 of these nodes. Don't declare more than 32 nav markers. That should be your limit. When you get a little bit more advanced, there's a couple of different things that you can do, but just for right now, just stick with that rule of thumb. 32 nav markers is your max. That also means that you can duplicate these, but as far as identifying goes, you cannot have more than 32 different identified nav markers. I hope that was clear. If you guys like the video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out a lot. It gives me a little bit more motivation. But I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions or concerns, please do comment on the bottom. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, or you can join the Discord. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you have a blessed day.